Hi, everybody. I'm Marco Hauen, and you are
Anna Wozna.
Ayada. So
Hey.
pleasure, and such a pleasure doing this again. And in our series of little videos we're doing today, it's about intuition in business. Where does it come from? Very good. So I think we should kick it off by explaining what is intuition. Anna, tell us what is intuition.
Yeah, let's start with the vocabulary, right? So intuition is this sensitive part of us that projects certain information within context that happened to us. For example, my P&L doesn't feel right. It's either like too good or too bad. And that's exactly that sense that you got to double check something. That's an extra information that goes from the very inside of yourself. You got to just listen to that. Intuitive sensations, they actually happen all the time. That goes from body, from our hormone system, from our organism as a whole. That's not our thinking process. That's the extra information, like an injection into our thinking process that either we recognize or no, either we use or no. It's up to us to increase this sensitivity to actually use this information. Since we haven't, why not to use? That's my point. Or just keep staying rational and not sense whatever else can come from our very inside. And I do believe that those tiny signals, tiny alerts, they actually matter a lot. They matter more rather than rational thinking can bring us into. So my point is to increase this sensitivity to those tiny signals and embed them into our thinking process to not miss the details, to not be disbalanced with rational part of selves only, to actually use what we're given. How's that?
Beautiful. Really great explanation. Well, I often get asked things like, what's the difference between intuition and instinct? And it's interesting that the male of us now talks about instinct. But instinct, the difference between instinct and intuition is instinct is something which is in a sense pre-programmed in ourselves, which is pre-programmed by very often by our genes. Genes is not the right word, but by the ancestral knowledge of, okay, there is a tiger coming. Well, now I should run. I should run fast, and it is directly linked to our biochemistry, because it's directly linked to how much adrenaline and cortisol is put into our bloodstream to be able to be instinctively reacting. Actually, a little bit of a controversial example I like to give, because would give you the possibility to think more about that. When we see our heroes who are saving somebody out of a river, or I don't know, whatever challenge which can happen where somebody has to be saved, we see these people, and very often you ask them, why did you do that? And they say, I have no clue. I just had to do it. That's instinct. It's not intuition. And it's good instinct. So actually that also puts us into the logic saying instinct is not necessarily bad, because it is actually had made us survive as a human race. And for those who have a pet at home, a cat or a dog, they will see what instinct is when you go close to them, or they feel the fear, they are gone in a millisecond, and you have no clue why, but they know, because they are so in tune with their instinct. So that is a pre-programmed reaction. And intuition is something which is just it's listening. Instinct is just it's carnal. It has to be done now.
It's a default reaction, fight or flight mode. Yeah, this is exactly like you're saying for the protection matter. But honestly, tigers are not there, at least not that a lot of them are outside. And you don't have to get the kitten from fire to house in the fire like regularly. And no matter what our ancient brain is telling to us, we're living in a totally different world. And acting instinctively just makes less and less and less of sense. And what can help us to differentiate the instinct, and that that leads to this cortisol injection and immediate reaction, but to actually change our behavior considering the updated world means to let ourselves, our brain and organism, a little bit of time in between this injection with hormones and the action itself, which means saying something, doing something, getting into something. Give us just a little bit of time, just to slow down for milliseconds at least, which is enough to not only hear what intuition tells you and differentiate it from the immediate instinct, but also put in there the rational thinking, vice versa, and combine it all together and then actually act. And usually there is time for that. There are not only milliseconds, we're not all the time like trading, where a couple seconds matters. We're not fire people kind of who need to save lives immediately. We're not on special services that has been trained to act immediately and in a correct way, not that instinctively speaking of, but that's totally different subject. We do have those milliseconds to actually train ourselves to differentiate instinct from intuition and use intuition to not be rational only.
I like that. There's so much things coming up, and just taking a recent example with what happened in Israel and the different kibbutzim, and you have some people who just had that millisecond and could, and they were still on instinct. I'm not talking about intuition here. Intuition is a slow process, not a fast process. And so they had the instinct, but they also had the right reactions, and that saved many lives. And actually, in the same vein, there was this one former general living in around Tel Aviv at that day, and he just heard that something happened. So there was no news at 7 o'clock in the morning, but he just heard through some channels that something happened. Nobody knew what, but his intuition said to him, "I have to drive down." And he actually drove down, and then during the driving down, he was there before the whole army was there, and actually then could also be a hero and save a lot of people. Saying that the one is very fast. Instinct is something very fast. It's really like something happens, we have to get out of here. And intuition it's the addition to our rational thinking. And interestingly enough, which came up for me when you just talked and explained this, is that instinct, if we train ourselves, we are able to stay rational in instinct and to still act and not fly around like chicken. And intuition is actually the other way around. It's rationality, which is empowered by the intuition of what is around us, by not only taking the senses of not only taking the input of our brain, but taking the senses into consideration, all the senses, because our body is such an incredible perceptive machine, which is taking on so much information at every millisecond, and we can't even don't have the brain capacity to process all that. But we have the capacity in our body to process it. So we need to listen to that body. So that's where the difference for me lies.
Plus, we don't need all the information, right? We need that exact information. We don't need intuitive signals about everything. We need this very context that bothers us. We need this very decision that is rationally looking like an Excel sheet, but something's wrong there, okay? There is sometimes, okay, here's the customer is coming. Everything looks super good. The deal is right there and the numbers are pretty impressive, but something doesn't smell well, doesn't feel right. And we can ignore that. We gotta learn our lessons in a more tough way. And I've been there when it felt to me like, yeah, something's wrong. Rational, all is well, but there's something, and I couldn't determine that. I remember that clearly. I figured that, okay, I gotta make it. I gotta make it anyways and gotta figure it out in progress of execution of certain partnership, for example. Yeah, I've got into a very interesting adventure. And I remember that tiny feeling. It doesn't mean don't go. It doesn't mean like stop, don't do anything, fly around, ignore what's supposed to be happen actually. No, that means keep in mind that there is something requiring your attention and try to clarify that as soon as it's possible if you're in, if you decided to be in. Because any rational decision, that's also a responsibility for consequences, right? Business, personal, any decision. That is a responsibility. If your intuition in the very beginning mention something not that clear, just don't ignore that because you took the responsibility for the decision already made. Keep clarifying it because there's always flexibility of further actions.
Yeah, so I see it, actually that's where the link lies in business. Great businessmen, and you can ask them all, they are not only taking rational decisions. Far from that. They are taking a lot of decisions, but they are taking a lot of decisions based on intuition. And this goes against a lot of what we are taught in economy school, and I don't know what. You have to have all the KPIs ready, and but a real entrepreneur, the ones who are really successful, they have the capacity to combine all that rational thought thinking with their intuition. That's the market I have to go. Just take Steve Jobs. Here's a guy who decides to build a phone. Never touched a phone he touched a phone, but never worked with phones in his company his whole life. And I will never forget when the first iPhone was actually presented. Steve Ballmer, former CEO of Microsoft, was asked what he thinks about it. And he was laughing his butt off. He said, you know, guys, we are doing with Windows CE, we are doing phone software since 10 years. This is something we are doing. This is not something where somebody just can come in and swoop the market. And he was literally laughing. I invite you to go to YouTube, do Windows CE, Steve Ballmer, iPhone. Watch the video. It's really funny. Well, he was wrong. Why was he wrong? Because he was totally irrational.
That's why.
Yeah, and why was Steve right? Because Steve had an intuition. Steve felt the market. Steve found routines, rituals for himself to be able to be attuned to what is really needed. Now he does his research, he did his marketing, everything. He did all that. Don't worry. But still, you need that intuition to really make the step. Because otherwise, if I do a rational thinking on anything, I can do the rational thinking for the upside and the downside. And I will do both. My mind will always do both. So I'm standing here saying, okay, now this can be a soaring success, but it also can be a total disaster. And if I stay irrational, what do? I cannot move. I cannot take a decision. I only can take a decision if I am linking to myself and saying, okay, can it work? Is this what is needed? Is this where it's going? And then it's like, there's the intuition. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. And that's where, when it comes to talking about intuition in business, where intuition is not only a nice add-on. Intuition is the only way how you can do good business from my perspective.
And that all leads to maintenance of personal integrity. Again, always. Integration of all of our parts. Rational, yes. Our correct actions, like in your story with Jobs, of course. It's not like magic that works only in a not clear metaphysical way and that's it. No, there's lots of work. The point is to include your guts, all the information that we're given with, into any context that is happening around us, and keep our integrity always solid, always in place, to not make one-side decisions, to include all the information that is around and that can influence and should actually. That's the point.
There is something come up which is really interesting for me in this context is very often entrepreneurs and even successful entrepreneurs are, before they are really successful, before they are hailed as being the heroes, they are very often thought being volatile, changing their mind and so on all the time. And that's totally normal because they run on intuition. And if they're good, they run on numbers and intuition, and not as volatile as somebody who is not taking numbers into account, but they're running on intuition. And that's how it is. It is needed, and this is the way how it works. It cannot be different. If you are totally straight on with your decision making based on all the figures, probably you're not taking any decision. It's just it's already there. It's like if numbers say, oh yeah, we to be able to sustain next 2023, we have to fire 25 people and to cut cost by X amount. Okay, what decision is that to take? You just take that decision, or you say, but I have the intuition that our new product can really drive it, and I'm ready to take the risk for 3 months to keep everybody in, see how it kicks in. And that's scary. That's freakingly scary. Talking about authenticity or integrity, talking about that, being true to yourself and saying, okay, I am able to do that now. I will do that because it is what is needed now. Right? That actually is the differentiating factor between a good and a not so good entrepreneur, in my opinion.
Last, that's about having options. Intuition suggests you options, not only obvious one based on numbers, for example, but some extra that don't seem like possible at all, might not, until you're getting into that, taking some courage. And then maintaining certain responsibility for what intuition told you. And usually historical lessons prove that it's always right.
Yeah. It's clear. Huh? It's if you look back, and I challenge everybody listening to this, think back in your life. Think about the big decisions in your life. Look at the ones where you really see that you took your intuition. And then look at them if that were the right ones. Very rarely these were the wrong ones. The wrong ones, it's not that every rational decision is a wrong one. It's just like it's a 50-50 chance.
Not completely.
And intuition is that's the add-on, and that's the deciding factor to make it successful.
Great.
That was amazing. So I think we had a great talk, and looking forward to see you next time on our next video about, we will see. It will be great.
Let's use our intuition. What's gonna come?
Oh, I love that. Let's do that.